So I just start with prayers to the spiritual master. Om Jnanam Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadammayam Tadadi Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitangsha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay. Okay, so actually, both of these topics are very broad, very large topics. The Rasa Lila and the mood of Mahaprabhu, they're closely related, deeply related. But because of the expansive nature of this topic, I'll be maybe talking more about the Rasa Lila and then talking towards the end about the mood of Mahaprabhu. And you'll see why and how it goes. Actually, it's only because of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Lord Chaitanya, the Panchatattva, that we can even, dare to come close to these subject matters. But my discussion is mainly based upon, Srila Prabhupada and some acharyas. And so by their mercy, which is also Mahaprabhu's mercy, we are going to try to discuss this. Now, it was not my intention to take this topic. Yash Prabhu had given 4 different options, and somehow this is the only week that worked, and this week was the Rasa Lila. So I'm wholly and fully unqualified to talk about this, to discuss this. But by the mercy of all of you, Srila Prabhupada and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, hopefully we can say something and we can discuss this. Also, I had the chance to study Maya when I was doing my graduate work in Hinduism, Hindu studies at Oxford University. I know some of you are connected with that program in different ways. And when I went for my PhD, I was thinking about a dissertation topic, and my bachelor studies were in the sciences, so I really didn't have a background in Hinduism, Vaishnavism, the scholarly study of Vaishnavism, or religion or Sanskrit. I sort of switched fields So when trying to decide on a topic, I was thinking, well, what do I have a background in? And I said, well, I don't have a background in Jiva Goswami or the Acharyas or Gaudiya Vaishnavism or in Krishna, but I have a background in Maya, right? I got that one down. So might as well start with your strength, right? So I'll study Maya. And it turned out to be a nice topic because many things were revealed in the course of that study. And one of the key things is how, you know, Maya is actually Krishna's energy. It's not just all bad. It's actually very good. And the Krishna's energy, that is Maya, Maya's primary role is actually in the spiritual world as the facilitator, as the architect of Krishna's divine pastimes. And only on the side, Maya has an aspect. Just one aspect of Maya is in terms of the material world. And we'll get more into that. But in the course of discussing Yoga Maya, one invariably encounters the Rasa Lila, because the Rasa Lila is the dance of divine love, right? And it's been designed and it's possible by Krishna's own energy, that is his Yoga Maya potency. So when studying Yoga Maya, one has to try to, write about, understand this wonderful section of the Krishna book of Srimad Bhagavatam, the Rasa Lila. And so in the context of that, I had some opportunity to write a chapter. It's a chapter in my book, Maya in the Bhagavad Purana, Human Suffering and Divine Play. It's available on Amazon. So a chapter in that is on Yoga Maya and the Rasa Lila. And some things that I'm speaking of today, I'll be drawing from there. And that's kind of where my introduction came about in terms of writing on it. But we can only pray to appreciate or understand anything about this by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. So though we can study at any academic institution in the world, they can give us the writing skills and the research skills, but as far as understanding the Rasa Lila, only Prabhupada really gives us that. Only a pure devotee can break into it. And maybe some other great devotees, but at least the pure devotee that I have access to is Prabhupada's books. And so, we take content from there, sort of reincarnate it, write it in academic language and present it for people in general. But it's all coming from that same source. So Rasa Lila, let us begin. So what does this word Rasa Lila mean? Rasa means juice or nectar, emotion or sweet taste. And Lila means pastime or play. Lila actually literally means play. So it is the nectarian, juicy, sweet play or pastime of Krishna. Srila Prabhupada, again, in his translation, he's so perfect. He translates Lila not as play, but pastime, because people may make it cheap. They may kind of interpret it as something very cheap. So it's a pastime. And Garuda Prabhu, who would have been perfect for this topic, he's written a book on this. He translates Rasa Lila as the dance of divine love, which is a very nice translation. Very nice way to put it. It's a dance of divine love. So what are some of the aspects of the Rasa Lila? It's amazing how deep and how relevant and how instructive the Rasa Lila chapters in the Bhagavatam and Krishna book are. There are 5 chapters. It's not just Krishna dancing with the gopis. That's not the Rasa Lila. There's so much to it. So much instruction, so much depth. And I think a few of your readings touched on it. But try to read all 5 of those chapters and you'll see. So there's the theological, devotional messages. There are ethical messages. There are social messages. There's the Rasa Lila through a historical lens, meaning by reading the Rasa Lila, one can understand the history of Vedic culture, of spiritual culture in India during Krishna's time, 5,000 years ago. Then the Rasa Lila is depicted in art, dance, and drama in every form. It's everywhere. You know, it has to be the most beautiful poem in the world, because all around the world you'll find paintings. If you see a painting of Krishna, 90% of the time it's a painting, a Rasa Lila, Rasa dance painting. And there's festivals, observations of the Rasa Lila, which we just encountered at the beginning of Kartik, Sharad Purnima. And also in terms of linguistics, it's the most beautiful Sanskrit poem in the world. And you may have heard this because my brother tells this quite often. But when we were studying in England, then one of the visiting faculty was Professor Narasimhacharya, and Professor Narasimhacharya had received the President of India's award for scholarship in Sanskrit, for his skill in Sanskrit. He was, you know, kind of out of his age in some ways, out of his age meaning of a different age. He would, like the rishis of the past, he didn't look like a rishi, he just looked like a, you know, a real simple professor from Madras or Chennai, I forget where exactly it was. And he would just compose verses on the spot. You know, like it was someone's birthday party and he'd compose 10 verses in glorification of, you know, of someone he doesn't know, but just like, you know, the colors of their clothes and not just that, like, you know, just the way they're speaking or something, and in perfect Sanskrit. Like it was, we tried to memorize verses, he would just compose verses on the spot. And in India, even to this day, but especially during his time, he's no longer alive. And he was 70 years old when about 20 years ago, or 15 years ago, he was 70 years old. And in his time, there are many, many Sanskritists in India. I mean, Varanasi is filled with Sanskritists. And he received the President's Award from the President of India in Sanskrit, for Sanskrit. So he had to be very good, right? And he was actually a great devotee of Hayagriva, who's like the incarnation of the Lord for poetry in Sanskrit. And he told us that in every exam, Sanskrit exam in India, this Rasa Lila is the test for the Sanskrit students. It's the final test. If you can, if the student can translate, understand, you know, decipher the poetry, the grammar of the Rasa Lila, then they're masters. Because he said that factually speaking, you don't find a song, a narration, a poem, whatever you want to call it, that's more beautiful than that. And remember, this is a person who would produce Sanskrit verses on the go, right? A person who composed Sanskrit verses on the dinner table. He wrote 100 verses in glorification of Srila Prabhupada. It was published in the BTG. Nice thick verses, you know, in the Brahma Samhita meter. He's saying that I can't compose verses like that. No one can compose verses like that. So it really is the smiling face of Krishna, the smile of Krishna. So the most beautiful poem. Regarding festivals, just recently it may have changed because of a huge political upheaval in Manipur. But until a few years ago in Manipur, it was the tradition that every girl would learn the Rasa Lila growing up. And they would do Maha Rasa Lilas, like Krishna would do with, you know, millions of gopis, right? In the same spirit, they would do it with hundreds of thousands of girls. The whole town would come, and they would do these beautiful beautiful Rasa Lila performances. The whole state, Manipur, was dedicated to this pastime. And when we actually read the pastime, and that's why I'm bringing all these points up, it's not really a kind of super, you could say, like madhurya in the sense of like conjugal love narration throughout. There are a few verses that describe the exchange between the gopis and Krishna that, that only advanced devotees can really appreciate in the right mood, and we can't really understand them. We tend to, but most of them are like Krishna's instructions to the gopis response to Krishna, like conversations on philosophy. When Krishna leaves the gopis, then they're glorifying him. At that moment of shock, they remember that Krishna is God. Yogamaya's, influence sort of reduces, and they're glorifying him. You're the cause of all causes. So when I read, and when you read the Rasa Lila, the 5 chapters, you realize it's not just all 5 chapters of a love story. It's mainly deep philosophy, the highest philosophy, amazing messages and principles, which we will see now. And only a really small part of it is actually when they dance. It's 1 chapter, and even that, like half a chapter of that chapter. Everything else is glorification of Krishna and the gopis, or separation, the mood of separation. So, so it's actually not so, the most of the Rasa Lila is not that different in our discussion, or difficult to discuss, because it's philosophical in nature. And this is why Shukadeva Goswami, he says that anyone who carefully reads the Rasa Lila in the disciplic succession, in the mood of humble submission from the pure devotees, that person, if they hear it again and again, by hearing this, lust in the heart is removed, because this section has a whole philosophy in it. It has the entire message in it, and ultimately it has the highest form of love in it, and that replaces the lust in our hearts. So, this is the benediction of properly reading the Rasa Lila, is that the biggest challenge, what Krishna says, the undefeatable enemy, the all-devouring sinful enemy in this world, which is lust, that is removed from the heart. So how wonderful it is, how nice, how powerful it is. So there are 5 chapters to the Rasa Lila, 13 scenes, and there's dialogues at the beginning and end to offer the proper understanding of the Lila. Shukadeva Goswami does this, Maharaj Parikshit asks questions so no one can misunderstand it, and then Srila Prabhupada does this. Every speaker who's speaking on this first begins by clarifying, don't think this is ordinary. These are sages transformed into gopis who are dancing with Krishna. They don't have a speck of lust in their heart. And that's a major part of this. And there's a total of 173 verses total. So these are the 5 chapters. Chapter 29 is Krishna and the gopis meet for the Rasa dance. Chapter 30, the gopis search for Krishna. Krishna leaves, so they meet, Krishna leaves. Chapter 31, the gopis' songs of separation. Chapter 32, the reunion. And chapter 33, the Rasa dance. So it starts off, the Rasa Lila starts off by Krishna observing that it's the right season to dance. Autumn season and the full moon. And then what initiates the Rasa Lila is Krishna playing on his divine flute. The flute song. And we get more into this, Krishna's flute. Krishna then hides from the gopis' vision. He disappears. After all that anticipation, after meeting Krishna, he disappears. Now, please note, as we're going through this, that these are the successive stages of devotion for the aspiring devotee. The first one is the right atmosphere has to be there, right? We have to be with devotees. We have to be somewhat in the mode of goodness. We can't be engaged in sinful activities. So that's like the correct time, the autumn season and the full moon. The moon of Lord Chaitanya, right, is shining there. Then the right atmosphere is there, but we start the process of bhakti when we are attracted to Krishna, when somehow a devotee or someone attracts us to Krishna. So that's the sound of Krishna's flute. Krishna's flute attracts the minds of everyone. Nishamya Geetam Tadananga Vardhanam, right? That the sound of Krishna's flute attracts the world. And remember that sound, Prabhupada says in the Chaitanya Chaitamrita, the sound of Krishna's flute is the sound of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra if chanted purely. So it's the Maha Mantra that attracts people, and then they come to Krishna consciousness. They come out searching for Krishna. Prabhupada actually says there's a purport in the Chaitanya Chaitamrita that the Maha Mantra, when chanted purely, nicely, in not professionally, but in devotion, is the sound of Krishna's flute. And then when we come to Krishna and we become interested in spiritual life, we start the process of bhakti, like the gopis did, then Krishna hides from our vision. That's why, right, every new devotee meets Krishna, has ecstatic symptoms, is the most ecstatic devotee in the temple, is there for Mangalarti every single day. And then as we become senior devotees, all of a sudden, people start disappearing. Why? Because then Krishna tests the devotee. And this is what he does to the gopis. Krishna hides from the person who's given everything, their life to Krishna. They left the material world. They left everything. They left their friends and their girlfriends and their boyfriends, and they just decided to dedicate their life to Krishna. The only thing they have in their life is Krishna. But then Krishna disappears. Krishna forsakes them. And then they have only emptiness, darkness in front of them. And one Christian saint, Saint John of the Cross, he calls this the dark night of the soul. In other religions also, there's this conception that when you come to God, you initially encounter God, but then God forsakes you, he leaves you. And that's the dark night of the soul. And in that darkness, in that emptiness, in that despair, Krishna then reveals himself. It's in the absence of the Lord that we find his presence. But if you find his presence in his presence, then you don't find him. Right? You go to the temple, Krishna's there, you see Krishna there, Krishna's there. But you find Krishna when Krishna's not there. So Krishna has to first create the absence. We chant no taste. We go to the temple, devotees are mean to us. We listen to a class, it's like the most horrible class. Maybe this is that one class. We, we eat the prasadam, it's got filled with chilies and oil, and we're like, I want to go and, have a cheese pizza at Pizza Hut. Nothing is working. We turn away from ISKCON, try to join the Moonies, and Krishna's not appearing there. And that experience is the gopis' experience. Right? That is the experience of every devotee. And that's why these pastimes are there, because they're teaching us, they're showing us that the dark night of the soul will come. But it's during that time, the genuine devotee doesn't go to the Munis, but he searches for Krishna. And this is what the gopis do. He prays to Krishna. He sings about Krishna, earnestly knowing and waiting that one day Krishna will come. If I keep doing this, one day that taste will come. One day my chanting will bear fruit. I'm just going to keep doing it. And this is the gopis. They almost lose hope. But they don't lose hope because there's no other hope in their life other than Krishna. So the gopis search for Krishna. Krishna disappears from their vision. The gopis search for Krishna. And this is the search of the sadhaka, of the devotee, searching for Krishna, trying to find association, trying to read the books, trying to wash as many pots, trying to, do one sadhana, just in search for Krishna, that something might inspire Krishna's mercy. And in that search, the gopis are singing and chanting and hearing, remembering Krishna's pastimes. And this is the process of Shravanam Kirtanam, the process of Bhajana Kriya. We have to hear and chant and remember about Krishna's pastimes. And then they recite what is famously known as the Gopi Gita, one verse of which brought ecstasy to Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We look at that more. And then Krishna reappears. Krishna reappears amongst the gopis. And when he reappears, then the gopis have found, now they're ready. After wanting him so much, hankering for him, they finally found Krishna, where they cannot think of him as something ordinary, cannot take him for granted in the way that they were before. See, the problem is that why Krishna does this, when we join Krishna consciousness and we get that spiritual bliss, we get that association, we take it for granted. Because when there's a problem or a devotee causes a problem, we want to, throw them away, because we think, this is easy to get, and this person is like, just ordinary, and everything here is ordinary. But when we actually understand that it's extraordinary, that within that, within what Krishna is giving us is so deep, then we're actually ready, right? So now they're actually ready. But the gopis have questions for Krishna, which is also the devotee. The devotee questions the Lord. Why did you let us suffer in this way? What is the nature of your love, Krishna? And this is again one of those sections that I was mentioning. So deep and philosophical in nature. Krishna's there and they're questioning the nature of Krishna's love. They're saying, we gave our hearts to you. Why are you forsaking us? What is your love? What is the nature of your love? Why do you treat your devotees like this? Why do you hide yourself from the world? Right? And then after becoming floored by Krishna's mercy, by realizing the extent of Krishna's mercy, that how merciful Krishna was actually. This is not his punishment, but this was his greatest benediction. The gopis, they begin to dance with, the Rasa dance begins. And that's the final chapter. This is just at the end. The Rasa dance begins and Krishna dances with each and every gopi. Again, that holding a lot of significance. We'll see more. This Rasa dance is has begun, and the gopis they are now dancing with Krishna hand in hand. So yeah, so that's sort of on this point of how the devotee questions the Lord, but then after understanding the great benediction, the great mercy that the Lord has bestowed, experiences ecstasy. They actually become, they become ecstatic, joyful by and their heart filled with gratitude. That Krishna, you are so kind by putting me through this. That is manifest. That becomes, manifest in then just wanting to serve the Lord. Like you may have had this experience in your devotional life where your spiritual teacher, or spiritual master, or, your spiritual guide, they give you a very hard lesson, one that makes you actually angrier. But then when you actually, because it hurts one's ego, but when you actually overcome it and you understand that I was wrong, that they were right, and they were teaching me a very deep lesson, then one's gratitude for that spiritual, that shiksha guru, that spiritual mentor, goes tenfold. So before they gave that hard instruction, one had the gratitude. One really loved them. That's when one accepted them as one's spiritual guide. During the hard lesson, it's just like, you start questioning everything. But once you pass that hard lesson, then the gratitude that you had becomes 10 times the amount that you started with, because of you see the beauty of that principle of self-surrender that is being taught in that instruction. And that's the way the gopis feel. So then they dance with Krishna, and then the Rasa dance takes place. Okay, so now with this general overview, I'm now going to start with some more details, going through this same sequence. So this is the first verse of the 5 chapters of the Rasa Lila. Bhagavan api taratri sharadot phula malika viksharantum manaschakre yogamaya upashrita. Even the beloved Lord, seeing those nights in autumn filled with blooming jasmine flowers, turned his mind toward love's delights, fully taking refuge in Yogamaya's elusive powers. So this is a very significant verse. This is why I put it, because Krishna is taking refuge or shelter in Yogamaya. Right? Generally, we are covered by Maya, but here Krishna is taking shelter or refuge. The specific word, Sanskrit word here is upashrita, which literally means to surrender to take shelter of Yogamaya. And this is God. So how do we understand this? The best way to understand it is that Krishna is powerful enough. God is powerful enough to disempower himself. He is so powerful that he can even disempower himself and still be the most powerful. Just like, the perennial philosopher's challenge. What's that perennial? Can God build a rock that he cannot lift? Have any of you come across this one? Can God can God create a rock that he cannot lift? And the philosophers feel that they got Krishna, they caught him. He can't build a rock that he can't lift. Because if he can't lift it, then he's not God. And if he can't build it, then he's not God. Because God means all powerful. But no, Prabhupada gave an answer to that. He said, yes, Krishna can build a rock that he cannot lift. And then he said, and then he can lift it. So that's Krishna. So in the same way, Krishna can be so God, so powerful that nothing is beyond him. Yet at the same time, Krishna can be so powerful that he can forget that he's God. He can truly forget that he's God. He can truly disempower himself so that he forgets and that he's afraid of Mother Yashoda's little stick. So that this person who creates all the cosmic manifestations, runs in fear of Mother Yashoda, and he's truly afraid of her stick. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur points this out, that this is not just a play or a drama. Krishna is not just doing a drama here. He's actually enjoying these pastimes because he's actually feeling these emotions. How is that possible? Because of Yogamaya. But we have to remember that Yogamaya is Krishna's own energy. So it's not a power outside of Krishna that's overpowering him, and but he's able by his own energy to forget that he's God. But the moment he needs it, he remembers that he's God. This is the amazing quality of Krishna. Right. So he's already, with Mother Yashoda and things doing this, but now when he starts the Rasa Lila, this is like completely letting go, kind of entering into Yogamaya's world. so that he can truly dance with the gopis and forget that, he has to, make the universal clock run and create and destroy and do all these things. He just turns his mind to love's delights. So this is the first time and the only time in the Bhagavatam that you find Krishna being described, explicitly being described, taking refuge in Yoga Maya. And this is why it can be understood that the Rasa Lila is the most intimate and intense pastime of the Lord. It's really amazing. So this is telling us that that Krishna is allowing himself to forget. This is a discussion on memory and forgetfulness. Just like we can also understand this to some degree, that just like when we're in a drama, then our nature is such that if we're a very good actor and we're deeply absorbed in a drama, we forget our real identity. And this is why in Ram Leelas in India, in very good Ram Leelas, they generally have two Lakshmans. They have two Lakshmans, one Lakshman and then another Lakshman who's backstage. Because that actor gets so much in the role of Lakshman that when Indrajit sends his, Shakti weapon and, pierces Lakshman's back and he faints, then that actor actually faints. And when they faint, then the other actor takes over. So good actors actually forget. So even we have that, Krishna's given us that capacity to forget our real identity. But if they're doing a drama and all of a sudden, in the audience, someone, does gunfire, there's a bullet that's shot in the air, then they'll remember who they are. In the same way, Krishna, absorbed in prema by the potency of Yoga Maya, can completely forget that he's God. But then if a demon comes around, he immediately remembers that he's God and he has all this power. So Maya, just a very quick thing. We're not going to talk about Maya, but just in terms of defining it, Maya is generally translated as illusion, but Maya doesn't mean illusion. When this verse says Krishna takes refuge of his Yoga Maya, the Mayavadis, they capitalize on this and they say, see, Krishna's in Maya. He's under Maya also. No, Maya, all the way from the Vedas, the most original meaning of it is as creative power, energy. And this one energy can be elusive at times. And Srila Prabhupada, in his introduction to the 10th canto, points this out. He says that there's only one energy that Krishna has. That one energy is elusive for those of us in the material world. But it's that same energy. There's no two energies. And it's that energy that's creating these worlds. And so it's a creative energy. In fact, Maya comes from the root ma. Sanskrit root ma, which means to create as a mother would do. So it's the same word ma, like every culture has ma means mother. It's the creative power of God. It's the mother that teaches us in this material world and that serves Krishna in the spiritual world. So we don't have time to go in the Sanskrit and the details in the verses. But when you read and carefully look at the verses on successive occasions, numerous occasions, in the Rasa Lila narrative, the gopis are described as yogis. Shukadeva Goswami is so careful with his words so that no one misunderstands that the gopis are just ordinary girls. He calls the gopis yogis. And he calls Krishna what? It's one of Krishna's names. He calls Krishna Yogeshwara. He is the Ishvara, or the master of the gopis. Or really, actually, he calls him Yogeshwareshwara. He is the master of all the masters of yoga. And what is the yoga? So the gopis are the devotees, right? I was building that analogy of the devotee coming to Krishna consciousness, going through those successive stages. So if the gopis are the yogis, which is a term that the Bhagavatam is using, I'm not using to describe the gopis, then what is their yoga? Our yoga is chanting Hare Krishna, right? That's yoga. Our yoga is bhakti yoga. Their yoga is the Rasa Lila. That's their service to Krishna. So the yoga is the Rasa Lila, and the power that draws the gopis and Krishna together is Yoga Maya. This is the power of intimacy, the power of yoga, so that both the gopis and Krishna can forget Krishna's power. See, in the material world, Maya makes us forget Krishna. It makes us forget God. But in the spiritual world, Maya makes us forget that he is God. It doesn't make us forget God, but it makes us forget that he is God. It makes us forget the majesty of God. So that's why in the first verse, Yoga Maya's presence is there. Yoga Maya Upashita. That the stage, producer, you could say, set our artist, the stage artist is Yoga Maya here. So this word yoga comes from the Sanskrit word yuj, which is the same as the English word yoke. Who knows the meaning of the English word yoke? By looking at this picture, you could probably guess, but someone say it out. What does the English word yoke mean?
To connect, to tie together.
Yes. And what does it refer to particularly?
Particularly to yoking together two oxen or two bulls to plow the fields.
Yes, it refers to this crossbar, like you're saying, that connects these two bulls. So it yokes them together, meaning it links them together. So the Sanskrit word yuj means literally means to connect or link. So therefore, when we say bhakti yoga, it means we're linking to God through bhakti, through devotion. When we say jnana yoga, for someone to say, well, reading books, that doesn't sound like yoga. I mean, that really doesn't sound like stretching. Maybe you're stretching your neck a little bit. No, yoga means to link. So you're connecting to God through jnana, through knowledge. Dhyana yoga, you're connecting to God through dhyana, meditation. So their yoga is the Rasa Lila. Their arms are interlinked with Krishna. That is connection. They're connecting to Krishna. So the gopis yoga, the yogis yoga in this case is this. So it's their way of connecting with Krishna. Shukadeva Goswami is making this point. It's not their dancing, like a dancing like this ballroom dance. No, they are connecting with God through this Rasa Lila in the most intimate form, in the most intimate way. And that is the perfection of connection, right? Perfection of yoga. So the Rasa Lila begins by the sound of Krishna's flute. Nishamya Geetam Tadananga Vardhanam. When Krishna plays his beautiful flute, it awakens that feeling of love in the hearts of the cowherd maidens of Raja. So they're busy in their household things. They got to boil the milk and take care of the kids and take care of the cows, and they love Krishna like anything. But what awakens those feelings of unstoppable love for Krishna, that dropping everything, they have to leave and go to Krishna? It's Nishamya Geetam. It's the sound of Krishna's flute. And what did we say the sound of Krishna's flute is? What's the proper metaphor? Not metaphor, but the proper homology, the equivalent in the material world for us?
The Mahamantra,
Yes.
chanted purely.
Yes. So it's the Mahamantra that awakens those feelings of love for Krishna that are already there within our hearts. And so the gopis particularly is described that they run towards Krishna when they hear that sound. And this is a little out of context, but just as a kind of interesting point. When they meet Krishna, when they dance with him, finally at the end, they dance with Krishna for one night. It is the Sharat Purnima night, the first day of Kartik. They dance with him for one night. But that night is no ordinary night. That night is one night of who? It's one night.
One night of Brahma.
Yes, one night of Brahma, which is about 4.32 billion years. So they danced with Krishna for 4.32 billion years. Have you ever had a dance that lasts for 1 billion years? So it's 4.32 billion years. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains why it needs to be so long. Why do you think it needs to be so long? I mean, they could have danced with him for like 10 years. That's pretty good. But why did it need to be 4.32 billion years?
To reciprocate with all the devotees.
Okay, very good. Any other suggestions also? Remember, Krishna's expanded himself, so he can dance with every single gopi. So it's not like they have to wait for their turn. But why?
Wasn't like this is related to the expanding himself? I heard, I don't know, I may be wrong, but that he was moving like so fast that like he wasn't expanding himself.
Very interesting point. So actually, Krishna does expand himself. He does, but one could also say that he's moving super fast, so fast that it's the same Krishna. It's the same thing. It's the same idea. I mean, either he's a master mover or he's a master, expander, whatever it is. He's with every gopi the entire time. But that's a beautiful point. Yes, he was with every single gopi through his wonderful power. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he says that it had to be 4.32 billion years because dancing with Krishna was so pleasurable that if it was any less, it would have been so short that it would have been the cause of the greatest unimaginable pain to separate from him. Right? Just like, I mean, this is the highest rasa in the material world. Let's face it, right? And this is why we aspire for it in the material world, but we don't realize we're aspiring for like the black and white version rather than the color version, which is Krishna's Rasa Lila. We're aspiring for worse than the black and white version, kind of like the I don't know, the TV screen that has the thousands of dots on it, and you can't see anything except for like slivers in the middle. Like we're wanting the contorted version. But when people are dancing, when we're doing a dance, they're really enjoying it, and so that's why they have to do it at least for a few hours. But imagine dancing with Krishna. It's so pleasurable that it had to be a night in Brahma. Otherwise, the dance could not end. They were so much in love. They're so much enjoying it that it just could not end. So it lasts for 4.32 billion years. And Krishna multiplies himself so that he could dance individually with each of them. And again, Rasa Lila narrative, always teaching us something. So Krishna expanding himself and dancing with each gopi. He could have just danced one Krishna, thousands of gopis circling around him, and it would have been just as blissful because Krishna's gone. But why do you think he has to expand and be with each gopi? I mean, he could have just been with each gopi and not have the dance, the Rasa Lila dance together. Or he could have danced one Krishna with all the gopis. But how is it that he does it like this?
Keshav writes in the chat here to answer it. He says, Yeyata mam prapadyante. He reciprocates with each devotee as they surrender individually.
Very nice. Hare Krishna, Keshav. Nice to hear your voice. And no, not your voice, your message. Thank you for that. Yes, he reciprocates with each devotee. So that's his individually going to each gopi. Krishna, there's billions of souls. And, when I was a teenager, I genuinely had this question. And it was the biggest question that would bother me for like years on end. Is there's billions of souls. How can I be sure that Krishna didn't just miss me? Like, like I'm like digit number 43 trillion and one. How do I know that he just didn't miss me? And in what way can I be special to him? But through this Rasa Leela, he's showing that every devotee has an individual, personal, 100% relationship with Krishna. And that's our relationship with Krishna. That though there might be trillions of souls, unlimited souls really, but we have Krishna 100%. Krishna's there 100% for us. Yet at the same time, though he's together with each gopi, they're all dancing together with Krishna. At the same time, devotional service, Krishna consciousness means doing it together, association. He could have danced with each gopi separately, had a separate rasa dance, just like one-on-one dance. But he doesn't choose to do that. What increases the bliss, what makes it so wonderful, the reason why he's with each gopi is because they're all dancing together for the pleasure of Krishna. And that's the association. That's what Prabhupada was saying, that if we truly love Krishna, our love for Krishna and for him is shown by how we cooperate. Because if we truly love Krishna, we will have no problem being humble and working together and serving together. So together, also separate. Like this is our whole philosophy, Veda. It's never either or. Like just to draw a comparison, like we hear the Sudama story, very key point, and Sudama Brahman and Krishna one time are out collecting wood for the guru. That was the service of the disciple. And one time when they were out, there was a great thunderstorm and terrible storm. And Sudama is just a Brahmana, he's not like a warrior guy. And so he gets really afraid by this storm. So Krishna holds one hand of Sudama. With his one hand, he holds the hand of Sudama. And with his other hand, he holds the bundle of sticks that they've collected, that they need to take back to their spiritual master through the storm. And the message there is that Krishna is showing that we have to do both things. We have to fulfill the instruction of the spiritual master, which is the part that, we sometimes in the name of association things, we forget that, we also have a duty to follow the instructions of the spiritual master. It's not just enough to be in the association of devotees. So one hand, he's holding the bundle of sticks. That's the instruction of the spiritual master. But in the other hand, he's holding Sudama's hand. That we have to fulfill the instruction of the spiritual master, but while holding our fellow devotee's hand. We have to fulfill it together, not alone. And that's Veda again. Both things side by side. Or sometimes you see devotees, they're totally into association, like, just like we got our association. But the drive to fulfill Krishna's instructions, Prabhupada's instructions may not be there. And other times you'll see devotees are totally into, every single instruction, but then they're not getting along with any devotees. That also is not complete. Both need to be there. So in the case with this, Krishna's with every gopi. We have our individual relationship, and that's why japa is so important. Because that's our relationship with Krishna. That's the gopis with Krishna alone. And that's why we have kirtan, because that's all of us together glorifying Krishna. So then when the gopis leave to run towards Krishna, then many people put obstacles on their path. Their mother-in-law comes along and says, "Where are you going at the dead of night?" Their husbands come along. Their children are crying, and they have to, kind of put them in a closet for a minute or someplace to run away. So they crossed all social and ethical boundaries to go and meet Krishna. We have to understand their sacrifice, that the gopis lived in a culture and society that if a girl went out alone at night, for one night, one time, no one in that society would marry that girl, especially if they're going to meet a man, right? So by doing this, they knew, and they were not aware that Krishna would, make arrangements for them, but they knew that they were giving up every single social status, social connection that they had. See, why are they pure devotees? Because they had too much to lose if this was a normal material situation. In other words, when they came back, their husbands would not accept them. Their families would disown them. due to that, they probably would not be able to see their kids. They would have no status in society. That was their sacrifice for Krishna. They gave up everything for Krishna. So, they were giving up all dharmas. That Krishna says, "Sarva dharman parityaja," right? They're giving up all dharmas by embracing the highest dharma, which is surrender to Krishna. So when they were leaving, most of the gopis were able to rush away. They were able to get away. They were fast, they were in the right place. They heard the sound of Krishna's flute and they left. But some gopis were not successful. And so they were locked in their homes because their husbands or their relatives had not allowed them to leave. Okay, I'm almost to the end of my time, so I have to hurry up. They were not allowed to leave, and due to that reason, they were still there. And those gopis, they embraced Krishna within their hearts, and this is the arrangement of Yogamaya, that the gopis who left, unknown to them, and the key important point here is unknown to them, because otherwise there's no boundary that they crossed. There's no transgression that they made. They did not know, that Rasa Lila points out. But in order to make arrangements so that they could come back, Yogamaya makes another gopi, their equivalent, that stays at home. So none of the cowherd men thought that their wives had left. And their spiritual bodies were dancing with Krishna, but their material bodies were still home with their wives and kids. But someone may also ask that if they had kids, they clearly had a relationship with their husbands. So how can a body that's, touched another man touch the body of Krishna? Well, it wasn't their material bodies that danced with Krishna. It was their spiritual bodies. All the material bodies stayed back. So when they reach there, then Krishna chides them and he teaches them about dharma. He says that the highest dharma of a woman is to serve her husband faithfully, to ensure the well-being of her relatives and to nourish her children. A husband who is not a sinner, even though he be of bad character, ill-fated, old, dull-headed, sick or poor, should not be abandoned, but women who desire to attain heaven. Without exception, the adultery of a woman of good birth does not lead to heaven. It is scandalous, fear-laden, worthless, fraught with difficulty, and abhorrent. So when they finally leave everything and come to Krishna, Krishna starts to speak to them like a very, moral person, according to the teachings of the scriptures, according to the principles of dharma. And what's very interesting, that the Bhagavatam or the gopis, they don't deny that this is dharma. People cannot have illicit affairs, and if you say that this is not dharma, then the whole family system, everything breaks down. You can't just leave your husband at home and run away with another man. But they say, we accept that, but the fulfillment of that dharma, because you are God, and this shows that the gopis did not just see Krishna as their lover, they knew that he was God. Because you are God, we are actually fulfilling this dharma that you are saying, because you are actually the soul within our husband's soul. The gopis, however, take nothing of this and cleverly retort, you, the knower of dharma, have declared that the occupational dharma of women consists of attending to friends, husband, and children. Then let this be our dharma when it comes to you, the source of this advice. O Lord, after all, you are the soul within all. And in fact, they you might think, oh, this was kind of not so nice to the woman, this Krishna's passage, but they take a slap at the husbands also. You are the eternal beloved, O soul. You are the eternal beloved, O soul of all. And so the learned place their affection in you. What is the use of husbands and children who simply cause problems? So they say, Krishna, why should we go back to these husbands and children? And they're very blunt about it. They simply cause problems. Very interesting. Rukmini Devi also says a similar passage when she is writing her letters to Krishna, that only a fool would marry a person who's made of, we know what the body is made of, blood, bones, skin, with a mustache on it. Who would want to love a bag of blood and bones with a mustache on it? They're simply the cause of problems. So they say that Krishna, we are fully dedicated to this dharma, but you have to understand that you are our true husbands. So great message here, that we cannot give up ordinary dharma. We cannot give up our duties just because we're devotees. And this is, the place of ethics in our movement. We have to be ethical. We have to abide to dharma. But abiding to dharma means recognizing that Krishna is parodharma, that the perfection of dharma is Krishna. And so the only exception to that dharma is if we are loving Krishna. No other man or woman can be an exception to that dharma. And this is why the Rasa Lila is not encouraging, frivolous, like what people accuse. And then maybe I have actually 30 slides and got only through half of them, so I won't go through all of them, but I'll just end with this point, that then after that, then Krishna agrees. Krishna then accepts their logic, and he starts to engage in pastimes with them. They start to love him and offer flowers to his feet. They start to just start to dance with him. The Rasa Lila has not started, and in doing so, they realize that they're the most fortunate people in this world. And it's a fact, right? The gopis are the greatest people, but they start to feel that they're the most fortunate people in this world. And the moment they feel that way, the very moment that they feel that way, Krishna disappears. And that's exactly how Krishna works. And it's shown so beautifully in this, that Krishna dislikes pride in the heart of his devotees so much. He dislikes it so much that the moment a devotee becomes proud, Krishna disappears. It doesn't matter how advanced we are. They were gopis, right? Lord Chaitanya says, Gopi bharatu padakamalyor dasa dasanudas, that we aspire to be the servants of the servants of God. Not we. Lord Chaitanya aspires to be the servant of these gopis. And these gopis, they became proud. But Krishna would not tolerate it. He had to disappear so that they could be attached to him again. And that reminds me of one thing that actually I want to end with. This is like, I was preparing and I didn't realize I didn't have to prepare so much. But then ending with the mood of Mahaprabhu. So when Krishna disappears, then the gopis start to sing songs. And this is Gopi Geetam. And when Maharaj Prataparudra, who was a king who was not supposed to have Lord Chaitanya's association, because sannyasis don't meet kings, when he was aspiring for that association, in order to get his association, he recited one verse. Well, he was reciting the Gopi Gita, but when Lord Chaitanya heard this verse, then he woke up in ecstatic love and he embraced Maharaj Prataparudra. And this tells us the mood of the gopis, that the gopis are not interested in their own pleasure of dancing with Krishna, but rather they are interested in bringing others to Krishna. That is the mood of the gopis. That is their true mood, that they're interested in bringing other souls to dance with Krishna, other gopis, other souls to Krishna. They always have one eye towards Krishna and one eye towards the conditioned souls, wanting to liberate them. They're completely selfless. They feel 1,000 times more pleasure in bringing another gopi in front of Krishna than dancing with Krishna themselves. And that mood of selflessness is epitomized by this verse, and we're going to read this verse and end with this. So I'm just going to stop this share and reshare because it doesn't let me do it all in one go. And, with your phones, with your, devices muted, please feel free to sing along. Tava kathamritam tapta jivanam kavibiriditam kalmashapaham Shabana mangalam Srimadatam Bhuvi grinanti ye bhurida jana. The nectar of your words and the descriptions of your activities are the life and soul of those suffering in this material world. These narrations, transmitted by learned sages, eradicate one's sinful reactions and bestow good fortune upon whoever hears them. These narrations are broadcast all over the world and are filled with spiritual power. Certainly, those who spread the message of Godhead are most munificent. So this was the gopis' mood. That's why they're singing in this way. That's why the gopis are praising those who spread the message of Godhead. And this was also Lord Chaitanya's mood. King Prataparudra recited this verse to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu during Lord Jagannath's Rath Yatra festival. The Lord was resting in a garden. King Prataparudra humbly entered and began massaging his legs and lotus feet. Then the king recited the 31st chapter of the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the songs of the gopis. The Chaitanya Charitamrita relates that when Lord Chaitanya heard this verse, beginning Tava Kathamritam, and this was not the first verse, he immediately arose in ecstatic love and embraced King Prataparudra. The incident is described in detail in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 14:4-8, and in his edition, Srila Prabhupada has given extensive. So the point being that this is verse 9, that Lord Chaitanya heard so many other verses, but when he heard this verse, he could not contain his ecstasy and he woke up. And that's the mood of Lord Chaitanya. Right? That's the heart of Lord Chaitanya, spreading this Krishna conscious movement. That is in the mood of the gopis. And this is why Prabhupada actually said that Sankirtan, spreading Krishna's mission, particularly in this context, it was book distribution, but I'm sure he meant it in general. He said it's in the mood of the gopis. We don't have to, go to some cave in Braja to experience that mood of the gopis. The mood of the gopis is felt when we are trying to spread Krishna consciousness. It's felt when the devotees are in, below freezing weather trying to distribute books in Siberia. That's when they're feeling that mood of the gopis and the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, because that is in fact where their heart is at. That's the mood in which they're coming to Krishna, is in this mood of giving, in this mood of compassion, in this mood of selflessness. So I'm going to stop here, and I'm sure all of you have wonderful realizations, so I'd like to, give you a chance to share them.
Thank you so much, Robert G. If anyone also has a question, feel free to use the raise hand feature, and then we can just choose some. Or any comments or realizations as well.
I hope I didn't put everyone to sleep. I may have. Aditya Prabhu, yes.
Hey Krishna Prabhu, thank you for the wonderful, wonderful class and so nicely dovetailing the pastime for our convenience so we can understand it. I think one question I had was, so understanding the mood of the gopis, how can we dovetail that understanding to something we can use in our life and specifically be able to think of Krishna as our everything, if that understanding is correct?
That's a very nice, question. In response to that, this one slide I wasn't able to cover. I'll share this one here, because I think that that's exactly how it becomes relevant to us. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. See, some devotees, some of the gopis were not able. It's showing the wrong screen. Some of the gopis were not able to go and meet Krishna, and they were left at home. And so, in those verses, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments. Vishwanatha states that Krishna's first expression of mercy bears the fruit of tormenting pain. Right, their separation from Krishna, their challenge in reaching Krishna, Krishna's hiding from them, Krishna's leaving them in the dark forest, not knowing if they can go left or right. His second wave of mercy causes an extraordinary shower of sweet bhakti rasa to rain down on his devotees. And Krishna promises that I give mercy in the form of my very self. So his second wave of mercy, not the first wave. The first wave is tormenting pain. His second wave of mercy, once we endure that, he gives his pure bhakti rasa. And his third wave of mercy is that Krishna gives his own self. And he tells this to the gopis that I cannot repay the love that you have shown me. He says at the end, you gave up, you crossed every boundary for me. And therefore I cannot repay the love that you have done for me. All I can do is give myself to you. So he gives himself. That's the most you can do for a person, right? You can give your money, you can give this, that, but when you give yourself, then you have nothing more left. When the gopis' material bodies were burned by the fire of separation from Krishna, they regained awareness of their eternal spiritual forms. So their separation of Krishna, why the first wave has to be tormenting pain? Krishna is not interested in giving us the pain. But that pain that we take for Krishna burns our material body. It actually burns that body. And that's the tapasya, the devotee, the pain that he takes for Krishna. It burns that body, and what comes out, what is remaining, is the eternal spiritual form. Endowed with the appropriate identity and mood, the gopis then experienced the infinite bliss of meditatively embracing the astonishing divine body of Achyuta Krishna, which was full of love for them. So we may feel, well, I can't dance with Krishna, so how can I have that mood of the gopis? But we have to understand that the gopis who couldn't go to Krishna were as fortunate or even more fortunate than the gopis who could meet with Krishna. Because those who couldn't go in separation, they were embracing Krishna. You know, the other gopis, they embraced and not embraced, you know, they were with him, they weren't with him. But those who couldn't go, they were constantly embracing him because Krishna was present there within their hearts. So for us, we have to increase that longing for Krishna. And that's what, you know, St. John the Cross says, that's what Rupa Goswami says, that the only requirement for love of God is greed to get love of God. Is the greed, is that longing for Krishna. Right? Is Krishna's not the backup plan. Krishna's the only plan. Krishna's not the, you know, the second thing on the list. He's the first and only thing on the list. That longing for Krishna, and that longing for Krishna is exhibited by our not holding back, by our dedication to him, by like the gopis do. They cross every boundary for Krishna. They are acting, they're transforming their feelings into action, where 24 hours a day they're hearing, chanting, and serving Krishna. And that's the process. It works. You know, if 24 hours a day we find a way to engage our minds in Krishna, hearing about Krishna, chanting about Krishna, serving Krishna, then we can be assured that Krishna will give himself to us. And that's the perfection of life. That's the bliss of life. Even at night, you know, we can sleep with a tape of the, you know, Amala Bhakta Prabhu's narration. He's narrated the whole Krishna book. You can leave it on, and while you're sleeping, it goes on. During the day, we can, you know, try to serve Krishna with our intelligence, with our body, with our mind. So that's Prabhupada's process, and he gave us everything that we need to become on that level. And in one song, in the purport to the song, I think it's Radha Krishna Pranam, one of those songs. He says that the goal of this Krishna consciousness movement is to see Krishna face to face, as I am seeing you and you are seeing me. And then in the purport to another bhajan, he says that the goal of this Krishna consciousness movement is to join the dancing party of Krishna. So how it applies to us, we should be assured that this is reality, that the goal of this Krishna consciousness movement is that one day, not prematurely, we shouldn't feel that we're there. We're millions of miles away. But one day, if we do the process nicely, by Prabhupada's mercy, we will join the dancing party of Krishna, because that's the goal of his process. One more quick thing. There's one Christian saint, Francis of Assisi. He says that there's 3 ways to kiss God. There's 3 ways to kiss God. He says if you kiss God you can kiss God on his feet. What does that relationship represent? When you kiss when you kiss someone on their feet, what does that mean?
Maybe that you're their servant.
The servant.
Or yeah.
Yeah. So the servant kisses the master's feet. You can kiss God on his hand. On his hand, like people kiss. What relationship does that refer to?
That
I'm
could be
not
other
sure.
things.
Yeah, Keshav, you're saying
It could be used either as an expression of fealty, of like also dasyam, but also friendship as well.
Friendship, yes. When you kiss someone on the hand, that's like, friendship. And the third way to kiss God, he says, is on the lips. So even as a Christian, he knew this. The third way to kiss God is on the lips. What does that mean? As a lover, right? Kissing God as a lover. And then he says, but as far as I am concerned, I'm still working on the feet. Right? But as far as I'm concerned, I'm still working on the feet. So that's our position. The goal is clear, to one day kiss Krishna on his lips. But the reality is also clear. Right now, I'm working on the feet. And that's why it's so nice that all of you decided to cover the Rasa Lila, because not that we're qualified to understand this, but the goal should be clear. And that's why one time we read it, we understand it. The goal is clear. What is that goal? It's important to know, and that's why it's nice to cover it.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for the wonderful answer. We have some questions in the chat, and so I'm going to try to summarize them because some of them are the same.
Radharani, Mataji also has her hand up. If you want to.
I can go after the one in the chat. I think that came up before.
Yeah. So it says that how does one let go of the pride so that I can understand the spiritual influences, and how when we do service can we not get proud when we do the service, and have the understanding that Krishna is always by our side.
Wow, that's a nice question. Who asked that question?
It was Kalyani.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. How do we not get proud of him? Yes. So, of course, I'll speak just with my very limited realization. But when Lord Chaitanya visits the I'm forgetting the name of that devotee. It's on the tip of my tongue, but he visits a devotee who has leprosy, and Lord Chaitanya embraces him. But that devotee in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, after Lord Chaitanya embraces him, his body becomes golden, very beautiful, because Lord Chaitanya embraced him. So that devotee doesn't like the fact that, imagine, this is the caliber of those devotees, that Lord Chaitanya embraced him and cured him of his disease and gave him this beautiful body, because he's afraid. He tells Lord Chaitanya that I'll become proud now, because now when I walk down the street, I'll have this glowing face, my body will be golden, and everyone bows to a devotee like this, right? So then Lord Chaitanya tells him that always chant the holy name of Krishna and share that with others, and pride will then never affect you. So chant the name of Krishna and teach others about Krishna. Do that constantly, and then pride will not affect you. So that's not easy to do, right? That's the instruction, but none of us can chant continuously, and to preach Krishna consciousness is also not easy. So, so this is why we always need a good guide, and someone who we are willing to listen to when we feel we're right. In other words, a guide that we trust enough that we will listen to them when they chastise us. Because unless we have that guide, we really cannot overcome it. And generally speaking, that guide is the spiritual master. And this is why the spiritual master can do what even Krishna cannot do, or any devotee, anyone else cannot do, is they see where the problem is, they see where the pride is, and they pull it out. So that's a short answer to your question. I just have to, plug in here real quick. Okay. Yes. So chanting the holy name of Krishna and taking shelter of a spiritual guide.
Thank you so much for the wonderful answer again. And I just wanted to confirm, do you have a little bit of time? We have a couple more questions.
I have time.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Next, Sushila.
Very well, Prabhuji. So glad we could hear from you today, and I'm really kind of disappointed you couldn't get through all of your slides in the limited time that we had. But I actually had a question a little bit off topic regarding the readings, which I believe you're also aware of. In one of the articles, I'm just going to bring it up on my own end, regarding the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, chapter 30, there was a portion of the reading where it discusses how there's different, let me bring it up, like how the gopis don't see Krishna as the husband of Rukmini or address him as Rukmini Raman, and there's the understanding that the different names of Krishna are different understandings of different aspects of the Lord. So at that part, I got a little bit confused, because I know there's a difference between referring to like Krishna as a higher power like Brahman versus Krishna on like a personal level, but then it seemed to differentiate also the different names of Krishna. And then it also mentioned how when he's known as Gopi Jana Vallabh, he is like he becomes the highest perfectional stage for the devotees. So I wasn't sure if I was misunderstanding if there's a sort of hierarchy among the names of Krishna, or if they're all essentially still equal, but just considered different interpretations of his different aspects.
That's a tough question. You and a very good question. Very nice. So Prabhupada says this actually, that within that oneness there's variety, and just like in the case of the rasas, every relationship with Krishna is perfect. Yet within perfect, somehow or the other, within perfect, there's more perfect and most perfect. So it's not that, Krishna's relationship with the cowherd boys or Krishna's relationship with Arjuna is lower. They're not lower, but it is the case that the gopis' rasa with Krishna is considered, Prabhupada says, from he uses such an interesting word, he says, from one point of view is considered higher, right? So the same thing is with Krishna and Krishna's names, that certain names are more intimate, right? They reveal Krishna more in his fullness. Because when Krishna is in his grandeur, it's not that Krishna is more manifest. Well, now his opulences are more manifest, so Krishna is more manifest. And the devotees who don't see the opulence, they're covered by Yoga Maya, so they're actually an illusion. No, it's the other way around. Yoga Maya is not covering, right? Yoga Maya is revealing. So the real Krishna, you could say the full Krishna, is Krishna, the lover of Srimati Radharani, Krishna Gopi Jana Vallabha, Krishna Radha Gopinath, Krishna the son of Mother Yashoda. That's who God truly is he's the son of Mother Yashoda. But sometimes he plays the role of creator and king and powerful. So certain names are more intimate. They're more perfect because they reveal Krishna's real nature more. They refer to Krishna's full nature more as his sweetness, which is the most important aspect of him. Whereas other relationships, other names are only expressing relationships that don't reveal it that much. So these names are more perfect, but those names are not less perfect. Like Prabhupada himself named his most favorite temple, it was the headquarters, LA, Rukmini Dwarkadish. Right? And he had the devotees chant. And for him, Rukmini Dwarkadish were Radha and Krishna. Very important point, because Lord Jagannath and in Jagannath Puri is actually Dwarka. It's not Vrindavan. But when Lord Chaitanya is seeing Lord Jagannath, he's not seeing Vasudeva Krishna. He's seeing, Yashoda Nandana. He's seeing Gopijana Vallabha. So it depends on the consciousness of the devotee, and then they will see accordingly.
Wonderful answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I think we had one more question in the chat, and then we can take after that, Keshav. I think Vishaka asked, Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. As you said, we should have Krishna as the plan, and not as our own backup plan. Our material mind makes it very difficult to do this. How can we do this actually?
That's a really nice question. I would say the main thing is association. Because with association we get confidence. With association we get the strength to surrender. And that association needs to be of a caliber that it gives us that. So association means, Prabhupada says, association means through service. Association doesn't mean it just doesn't mean doing devotional activities together, but it means spiritually advanced association that's going to engage us in Krishna's service. So association is very key in my own life. When I went to college and university, I was fortunate to be living with devotees throughout my college studies. And I know for a fact, based on many experiences, that that's what actually protected me and kept me in Krishna consciousness. Because even though I had the books, I had the chanting, I had everything, but if I didn't have the association, Krishna's material energy is so strong, I would have been swept away. And I'm currently swept away, but in a very, you could say, a literal way, like in a way of transgressing principles and whatnot, I would have been swept away. So association is what gives us that strength. Krishna says in the Gita, Vyavasayatmika buddhi ekeha kuru nandana bahu shaka hyananta shabuddhayo vyavasayanam, that those who are on this path, their aim is one. They're resolute in determination. They're completely focused. And it's that verse actually that inspired Srila to do the unthinkable at the age of 70, to take a ship. Oops. So my screen froze, but can you hear me? Yes.
Yes,
Yes, we can hear you, bro.
Okay, that's what inspired him to go and cross the sea. So that focused, attention must be there. And the other thing that helps a lot is what we say. Madan Gopal Prabhu actually explains it like this: having a good breakfast. So that's our sadhana. When our sadhana is strong, we can make the right decisions, and we won't look for other things. Just like if we have a good breakfast, then when we go out, we don't look for other food. So the breakfast is good, then we don't go and snack here and there. In the same way, when our own spiritual sadhana is strong, we won't look for other plans. We won't look for other things for shelter. We'll be satisfied with Krishna. We'll taste Krishna, we'll experience Krishna, so that we're satisfied with Krishna, and that's the only plan we need.
Wonderful, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. I think you can take your last question, Keshav.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you so much for such a really insightful and amazing class. I'm really glad to hear from you after after a long time. I appreciated the point that you made about like this idea that the Gopi service is also in the mood of selfless love, in the mood of sharing Krishna with others, in the mood of appreciating in that way. And linking it in a way, I guess, back to this idea of being a Goshti Anandi, of preaching, sharing Krishna. And yet still, like, we see this kind of dichotomy between our preaching practice and our internal cultivation, our internal sadhana, which many people think of as being like the kind of precursor to Raganuga Bhakti, to Raga Bhakti. And I feel as though, like, one of the things I felt, honestly, as I was reading was very kind of unqualified, very like almost like an interloper, reading like the very deep conversations between Ramananda Rai and Mahaprabhu. And I really related to the statement of St. Francis, which I've heard before, but I didn't remember who it was by, about how I'm still only working on the kiss of the feet. So while you're stating, I guess, that we are able to understand our goal and that we're serving in the mood of the gopis, and we're focusing on our sadhana, we're focusing on our preaching in a very kind of like practical way, is there any way that we should be seeing how we're becoming more and more qualified, or if we're becoming qualified, or what should be a difference in terms of studying for like trying to aspire for a higher ideal? Or should we just maintain that, through our main service of preaching, through our main service of sadhana, that this will just naturally arise?
Very interesting. Hare Krishna, Keshav Prabhu. It's so nice also for me to connect with you again. Hope things are good in Orlando, and you and your wonderful family, and or wherever you are at the moment.
I am in
Orlando, yes. Okay. Yeah. You know, like for my own life, I can just speak with my own realization. When I actually engaged myself, it was very scary at first, but when I involved myself in preaching Krishna consciousness, particularly actually distributing Srila Prabhupada's books, then I really started to experience a type of bliss that I had not experienced before, bliss in Krishna consciousness that I had not experienced. And that's when I realized that Prabhupada's process works. It actually works. And similarly with you were mentioning bhajan, Goshtanandi bhajan, similarly with our sadhana, that if we do our sadhana nicely, we actually can maintain a level of consciousness that we don't get so affected by material things, and we make advancement, and realization grows day by day. It naturally comes. So the point is that if Prabhupada was an eternal resident of Vrindavan, he came from the spiritual world, he knew what to give us to reach that position. And that's why his package, he gave us a package. It's not a one-off thing. He gave us a full thing of things, of a way that a devotee leads his life by example, by teaching others, which was very obvious. In the obvious way, he trained thousands of his disciples. His package works because he's from the spiritual world and he knows how to get there. And
I think we lost Roji for a second, but hopefully, I guess we can wait for a couple of minutes. He's going to come back, or what do you think, Yash?
Yeah, let's see for a minute or two. Maybe he just got disconnected. I know his computer was freezing.
Yeah. Hopefully he realizes, though.
Let me check with him as well, just in case. Okay, yeah, he's getting back on now.
Okay, sorry about that. Hare Krishna. Okay, I'm not sure at what point I got disconnected. Perhaps you can.
What I remember is that you mentioned that Prabhupada's process worked, especially sharing Krishna consciousness with others.
Yeah. Yes, and so then after that, maybe, or I said that before, that Prabhupada came from the spiritual world, right? He was an eternal resident of Vrindavan. He came from there, and he knew how we can go there. So that's why he gave us a process that he knows works. That's why he gave us a process that's a complete package. And sometimes we just do one part of the package, and that's why we don't feel that result. But if we do the full package, then we will immediately experience that reciprocation. Yeah, we will actually experience it in everyday life.
I suppose as a bit of a follow-up question, Prabhu.
Sure.
Because
yes.
In that sense, is this wariness in kind of delving into the sections of 10th canto of CC, of like these very confidential, intimate Leelas, is it justified in a sense? Should there be some sort of like, we should follow Srila Prabhupada's process first before studying that? Or is it just like, as long as we're practicing Krishna consciousness in the way that he intended us to, that we shouldn't?
So, but that is Prabhupada's process, right? That's why he gave us the books. And he asked us that you read these books very carefully. So reading those sections, including the Rasa Lila section, the Krishna book, and the Chaitanya Charitamrita, all those very intimate pastimes, that is his that is part of his process. In fact, every morning, the Tulsi Arti that we're singing, it's like super, you could say, esoteric, right? Let me become a resident of Vrindavan. Let me serve you in the kunjas of Vrindavan. And imagine how much Prabhupada is there to just give us entrance, open the door. We don't still have entrance, but open the door for us so that we can walk in. There, at that point, he can take a liberty that no one else could. No one started off their disciples on that level. So Tamal Krishna Maharaj actually says that Prabhupada's process of sadhana is actually sadhana in the wake of Raganuga. Sadhana in the path of Raganuga. So that's part of his process. And one more interesting thing you'll find in the Chaitanya Charitamrita is that very regularly Prabhupada will say that the entire movement and everything, all the practices that we do in this movement are based on the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So you'll come across purpose where he says, Lord Chaitanya did this and this, and then at the end he'll say, this is why we do this in our Krishna consciousness movement. So the Chaitanya Charitamrita is actually the handbook on the basis of which Lord, all of our activities and principles in our movement are set up, are established. Yes, it's a complete, complete guidebook.
That makes complete sense. Thanks, Prabhu.
Thank you. Very nice question.
All right. I think with that, we're at time here. thank you so much, Gopal Prabhuji, for joining us today and giving that amazing class for us and answering all those questions and staying extra despite the technical difficulties. So thank you so much, Prabhuji, and thank you all for joining. I know a couple of you were messaging directly for some additional questions. So what I can do is I'll save those questions, and then Prabhuji, I can send them to you, and then maybe I can just gather a response from you and send it out to those people.
Sure. Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah. And thank you so much for engaging me in this service. I feel really inspired by meeting all of you, and you know, before Yash told me about this, I didn't even know that this wonderful Sangha existed. So all glories to your Sangha, and keep at it. This is great.
Thank you, Prabhuji. We're hoping we can have you again in this Sangha and more to come.
Thank you. Yes, Prabhu.